Did you know in the beginning there was a throne? Not a throne carved from gold or adorned with jewels. Not yet. There was only a pasture, a sling, and a boy whose hands smelled of sheep, whose heart was untested by war, but whose spirit knew the whisper of heaven. The wind moved through the hills of Bethlehem like a messenger from God, and in that gentle rustle, a voice was calling, a voice that only the humble could hear. It said a name the world would one day know, David. While kings feasted in palaces, this boy kept watch over sheep. While warriors sharpened swords and polished armor, he tuned his harp and listened to the melodies of God. While nations prepared for war, he wrestled lions and bears in the solitude of the fields. History had chosen its champion, but no one in the palace knew it. Saul, son of Kish, stood tall in the eyes of men, a king anointed and exalted by God. His armor gleamed, his soldiers cheered his name, but within, the crown weighed heavily. God had once been with him, guiding his steps. Now, the spirit has departed. Darkness stirred in his heart, and fear grew in the corners of his mind. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart. 1 Samuel 13 verse 14. The words were quiet, almost imperceptible to those around him, but in heaven they echoed like thunder. And in the house of Jesse, 8 sons were called before the prophet Samuel. 7 strong, 7 proud, 7 the world might choose, 7 who carried themselves with confidence. But the Lord said, "Do not look at his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." 1 Samuel 16 verse 7. The first 7 walked past the prophet. One by one, they were rejected. And then, from the fields came the youngest, a shepherd, ruddy, barefoot, unarmed, unimportant in the eyes of men. But Samuel poured the oil upon his head, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. 1 Samuel 16 verse 13. Something invisible had changed forever. In the palace, Saul felt it before he saw it. The boy would bring light where there was darkness. Peace fled his own spirit, and a tormenting presence began to gnaw at him. 1 Samuel 16:14. David's first role in Saul's court was humble, musician, harper, servant. Yet in every note he played, the darkness within Saul recoiled. And every time the harp sounded, it was as though God himself was declaring, "I have not forgotten my promise." Years passed, and David grew in courage and wisdom. Then came the day when Israel's enemies challenged them in the valley of Elah. 2 armies faced each other. Israel, proud yet fearful. The Philistines, ruthless and mocking. And between them walked a man who was more than a man, a giant, Goliath. 6 cubits and a span, bronze armor clinking with each step, a spear that could crush a man. And with each taunt, his voice carried across the valley like rolling thunder. "Choose a man to fight me." 1 Samuel 17 verse 8. For 40 days, he defied Israel, and 40 days Israel cowered. Kings hid. Soldiers whispered prayers of desperation. And yet, a shepherd boy came with nothing but a staff, a sling, and unwavering faith. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? 1 Samuel 17 verse 26. The soldiers laughed. Even Saul doubted. And yet, David remembered the lion, the bear, the nights alone under the stars. He remembered God. "I have fought lions and bears. This Philistine will fall before the Lord. The battle is not mine, it is the Lord's." 1 Samuel 17 verses 37 to 47. 5 stones, 1 sling, a single prayer whispered under his breath. The giant fell as the stones struck his forehead, and the valley erupted with astonishment. Israel had found a champion, but the palace did not rejoice. The women sang of David, praising him for victories Saul had only dreamed of. And Saul's jealousy burned like fire. 1 Samuel 18 verses 7 to 8. Love had turned to suspicion. Favor had turned to hatred. Saul's spear now became a shadow over David, an ever-present threat. David's victories were many. His name grew, but the king's fear transformed into a relentless pursuit. Twice Saul threw his spear at David. Twice David escaped, unarmed but unharmed, guided by God's hand. He fled into the wilderness. Caves became his home. Outcasts became his allies. Songs became prayers. Even as a fugitive, David would not strike the Lord's anointed. I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. 1 Samuel 24 verse 10. This was the paradox of David, the strongest man in Israel, yet he conquered not with violence, but with mercy. Twice he could have ended Saul, and twice he spared him. And yet, Saul's darkness deepened. He consulted witches. He heard silence. He knew death was approaching, though he did not see how it would come. 1 Samuel 28 verse 15. Mount Gilboa became the scene of tragedy. Israel fell in battle. Saul was wounded and fell upon his own sword. Jonathan, his beloved son, fell with him. How the mighty have fallen. 2 Samuel 1 verse 19. David wept for Saul. He wept for Jonathan, for the kingdom, for what could have been. He did not rejoice, for a man after God's heart mourns the fall of the anointed. And yet, slowly, power shifted. The shepherd became king. The hunted became the ruler. The rejected became chosen. David captured Jerusalem, made it the capital, restored the ark, and ruled with justice. God made a covenant with him. Your house and your kingdom shall be established forever. 2 Samuel 7 verse 16. From David's line, a greater king would come, but even a man after God's own heart could not escape shadows. The greatest battles were yet to come, not against Philistines, not against giants, but against his own flesh, his own desire, and the consequences of his choices. A glance, a roof, a woman, a sin, a kingdom threatened, a child taken. The story is far from over, because the rise of David was only the beginning. The fall is yet to come, and when the harp grows silent, the sword grows heavy, and the throne lonely, the next chapters will test him as never before. The warrior king chosen by God will soon learn. The hardest battles are fought in the heart, not on the battlefield. The throne was David's. The crown rested lightly upon his head, yet the weight of a kingdom pressed on his heart. Jerusalem gleamed like a jewel. The ark of God carried proudly through the city streets, and the people sang of their new king. Victory was his. God's favor had crowned him. Yet even in triumph, the shadows whispered, a king is not made by the sword alone. A king is made by the heart. And the heart of David, though chosen, was human. David ruled with justice and mercy. Nations around Israel bowed or fled at the mention of his name. The Philistines, once defiant, now trembled. The young shepherd boy who had faced lions now faced a new battlefield, leadership itself. But in the quiet moments, the human heart is exposed. It was on a rooftop, under the cloak of night, that David first saw her, a woman bathing, her beauty reflecting the moonlight, and the king's desire ignited in a glance. He had conquered giants. He had united nations. Yet here was a battle he could not fight with sword or sling. Is this my heart, or a temptation from the adversary? He wondered. The woman was Bathsheba, wife of Uriah the Hittite, a loyal soldier in David's army. One glance would change the course of history. David summoned her. The line between desire and sin blurred. One night, one union. A child would come from this moment, innocent and unaware. But the consequences of kings are never small. The act was hidden, but not from God. David tried to cover it. He called Uriah home, hoping the soldier would sleep with his wife. Uriah, loyal even in ignorance, refused to enjoy comfort while his comrades fought on the battlefield. And so, the king's plan darkened further. David sent Uriah back to the front, carrying orders sealed in blood. Place him where the battle is fiercest, and abandon him. The sword of Israel struck swiftly. Uriah fell, and the child born from that night of sin never lived. God does not remain silent in the face of sin. The prophet Nathan approached the king, unarmed but fearless. His words were like a thunderclap in the silent palace. "You are the man. Thus says the Lord. I anointed you king, yet you have despised me. You have killed the innocent with your own hand and taken what is not yours. The sword shall never depart from your house." 2 Samuel 12 verses 7 to 10. David's heart broke. Confession flooded him. He fell on his face, tears streaming, voice shaking. "I have sinned against the Lord." 2 Samuel 12 verse 13. Forgiveness came, yet the consequences remained. The kingdom trembled. The family of David would never be free from strife. David tried to rule with wisdom, but the shadows of his sin returned in unexpected forms. His own son, Absalom, grew strong and handsome, beloved by the people. And yet, hatred festered for the man who had killed his brother, Amnon. Whispers spread. The people's hearts were swayed by a prince, promising justice and vengeance. David, once a shepherd fleeing Saul, now fled from his own son. Cities fell into silence as he abandoned his palace. The king who had conquered nations now wept in the wilderness. Even in exile, the heart of the warrior king remained unbroken. "Restore me, O Lord, that I may rise again. Lead me in your righteousness." Psalm 143 verse 10. In caves, David reflected on the rise and fall of men. The victories of youth, the mistakes of kingship, the weight of sin, and the mercy of God, all converged into a single understanding. A crown is not earned by power, but by obedience to the Lord. Yet the future was uncertain. Absalom plotted, rivals whispered, and in the distance, the sound of horses and armies approached. David's kingdom teetered on the edge of chaos. The boy who had slain a giant, the man who had unified a nation, now faced a threat not from swords, but from betrayal, ambition, and the consequences of his own choices. And in the shadowed valleys, the first drops of blood were spilled, not by enemies, but by his own family. Dear friend, remember this. Even the greatest kings, the mightiest warriors, and the most anointed servants of God face trials, mistakes, and consequences. What sets a heart after God apart is repentance, courage, and faith in his guidance. Just as David faced his failures but never abandoned God, you too can rise above your challenges with trust in the Lord. Sparkles, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34 verse 18. Your journey may have shadows, but God is with you in every step. Stay strong, stay faithful, and keep walking in his ways. Folded hands if this story has blessed or inspired you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Word of Eternity channel so you can continue walking through the epic story of David and be inspired by God's promises. Your support helps this message reach hearts all over the world.